Well, good morning. Welcome. It's good to be back with you this morning. It's exciting to see all the happy faces. We know we've had a wonderful summer, but staying busy. I know all the council members and myself have had lots of events and lots of things happening, but it's nice to be back with you and be able to get these meetings started and going. We'd like to begin by excusing Vice Mayor Glover, who's out of town, and Councilmember Richens will be joining us shortly. And so the first item on our agenda is to review next Monday night's regularly scheduled City Council meeting agenda. We'll go ahead and start with the first page when everybody's computers are up and running. Be just a moment here. Okay, on the first page we have items 2 through 3C. These are our liquor license applications. Our next page is 3D through 3H. (4A) through 4C. (4D) through 4F. (4G) through 4I. 4J through 4L. 4M and 4N. Yes, Councilmember Summers.
Mayor, on 4M, which is a replacement of batteries in the communication center for Topaz, I know there have been ongoing discussions between the Topaz and RWC about merging the management and creating a valley-wide radio communications center. What is the status of that, and how does that impact this investment? Do we expect to get the full value of this investment should those two systems merge? Nobody is standing up. Nobody. It's like we've been off for a month. Either that or nobody just really wants to.
Good morning. Feel free to let us know. Yes.
Dennis Murphy with Communications.
Great. So we're looking to invest some more in batteries, which looks like we need to do, but what I want to know is what's the status of the discussions between RWC and Topaz? Does the communications equipment between the two systems, are they compatible so that we're going to get this investment over time?
So there's a lot in there. So
awesome, I got time.
no matter what equipment is in these radio sites, we will need these batteries to back it up in a loss of power. Even with the generator, you need the batteries to take the load before the generator starts up and takes the load. So the equipment right now is compatible. And again, these batteries were purchased when the two systems for the RWC and the TRWC were one. So if you walked into a Phoenix facility, you'd see these same batteries.
Okay, so if we ended up with one valley-wide system, there's not going to be a change of equipment.
These were there.
We're going to get.
This is what they had when they worked together.
Oh, okay. So they work together.
Yes, these were bought in approximately 2002. So it's been in there for a while.
And this contract's for $132,000, and then we have other members that are a part of this co-op, and then so our portion of this looks like it'll be about 74% of that, and the other group pays in. Maybe a little bit of info on that.
Yes, sir. So the other, again, when you divide it up, Mesa pays 74% of all the expenses for the TRWC, and the other members, based on their size usage, combined for the other 26%.
Which is a great model. It's saving money for the taxpayers. We're using those economies of scales, and so this is a good way to do things. We're sharing costs.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good.
Governance models, combining that, still under discussion?
Yes. No, the discussions continue on. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Other questions, concerns? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Sir.
That was item 4M. 4N, on the rest of that page. And then we go to 4O through 5A, 5B through 5H, 5I through 6C, 6D through 6F.
I don't know how I let this fly past me.
Sure,
6B,
Councilmember Summers.
6 Bravo, which is to amend table Title 5, Chapter 17, Mesa Code about removing the library impact fee. I was reading this last night. Are we looking to scrub that off the books so that no longer applies? And why would we do that if there's a potential in the future for building a library? I mean, Southeast Mesa, other than the Express Library, doesn't have a physical library yet, and we would anticipate having to build one at some point. So why would we want to remove this completely from the books?
So Mayor and Councilmember Summers, we would love to keep it on the books, but the legislature has told us it's no longer an eligible impact fee.
Okay, so the
So it's
library,
being
the
removed.
library use itself is not an eligible impact fee.
Use the library, construction of libraries, yeah.
Last year, we came to you with some impact fee updates, and what the statute says is that we actually had to change the way we did impact fees if we were to adopt new impact fees. As a city, we decided not to do that because there was a stipulation in the statute that allowed us to basically use our existing impact fees on existing debt. So that's the model that we're under right now. Excuse me. Part of that, what that says is that we can continue to collect our current impact fees and up until the point that we've collected the money sufficient to pay the eligible pledged debt.
Which we have paid our debt, so we no longer have debt for the libraries.
We have collected the amount sufficient. We still have some payments left on the library debt, but we have collected the amount sufficient to pay that debt when it does come due. That's the first one. We knew that would come up in the next couple of years. It came up a little bit sooner. We actually thought it would come up this fiscal year in 14-15, but because of the permits coming in, it actually came in a little bit earlier. So June 13th was when we discontinued charging that fee. So we have not been charging the library impact fee since June 13th.
Okay. So just hypothetically, if we were to build a new facility in Eastmark, because that would be likely the location that we would build one, could we institute this again, or can we not based on what the legislature adopted?
Mayor and Councilmember Summers, that's correct. We could not, based on our current statute, our current model. Our impact fees can only be collected to pay off existing eligible pledged debt.
In other words, so going forward, if we want to build another facility, the existing homeowners would have to pay that debt. The growth no longer pays for itself.
Well, right, all the existing and future.
In this category.
Existing and future, in any of the categories. All of the categories, what we're doing right now, we are only allowed to use our impact fees that we are collecting to pay the existing pledged debt as we outlined last year. So we have basically a maximum or a cap that we can collect for impact fees based on what is eligible for us to use for those. Going into the future, if the city so chose to do new impact fees, we could institute new impact fees. We have to go through the full impact fee review and process, which is about a 2-year process in order to go through all of those following the new statutes. And that's kind of where we went down originally, is try to update those fees. When we realized that really we have, because of the model in the city of Mesa, we usually leverage our financing and use our impact fees to pay the financing. Because we did that, we were in a good position to just continue our existing fees without having to go through the new policies and procedures for instituting new fees. So we did not institute new impact fees. We continued our existing fees.
So the model had been, when developers came in, they built houses, we expanded our city, we collected impact fees, we put those impact fees towards adding amenities like libraries and other things in those communities.
Right. Yeah.
The legislature of elected officials that we elected decided that we weren't going to do that anymore. All of us were going to pay for that, and we no longer can put money in advance and have growth pay for itself.
But we,
That, for libraries.
well, no, Mayor,
That's rhetorical. You don't
Right,
have
sorry.
to answer that.
All right.
because we
I'm not gonna
because
make
we
you-
can't institute new fees. We have to go through the new process.
2-year
It-
process.
It's about 18
let's
months to
not
2
make it
years.
sound, it's not
we
quite
can
as
do it.
easy an option as we would, this is the option we pursued, because the other options were very difficult to pursue, and how we would have to set up the impact fees were very difficult. But what it allows for us to do today, the good news for us today is because we have existing debt related to the eligible expenses, we can use our existing impact fees to pay off the debt. But at some point, for new growth, new amenities, that would be a different approach.
Libraries is something I hear about all the time, and that's why when I read this, I was disappointed. I don't have a choice but to allow this to move forward, but it's extraordinarily disappointing that cities aren't allowed to finance things like this, and the burden now falls on the entire community who has lived here, who have libraries, and that's, I don't know. There's an election coming up. I want to talk about it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Anybody else? Okay, so that was 6B. We have 6C, and moving to the next page, which would be 6D through 6F. No? 6G through 6J. And it looks like our last page would be 7 through 8. So, okay, that is our agenda for next Monday night for the council meeting. Okay, our next item is to hear a presentation discuss the Falcon Field Terminal and Master Plan updates. So we'd like to welcome up our friends from Falcon Field. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. My name is Corrine Nystrom. I'm the airport director out at Falcon Field Airport. And before we start our presentation, I would like to just introduce to you some of the members of the Falcon Field staff who are instrumental in keeping this airport going and also played a big role in putting this presentation together.
Excellent.
First of all, I guess we'll start here with Rick Welker. Rick is our financial coordinator. We have Jake McDaniel, who is actually a student at ASU, who has been serving an internship out at Falcon Field. I think it's been an interesting experience for you.
Nice.
We have Deanne Thomas, who is our marketing and communications specialist.
Nice.
And Brad Hagan, who is our airport projects and operations supervisor. We also have Jim Law, our airport administration supervisor, but he was not able to be here today.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that introduction. It's nice to see your friendly faces. We can put names to faces now, so wonderful.
When he was standing up, I thought she was going to get ready to do some kind of acapella.
Yeah.
But it was just staff. Man.
Well, I could do that, but you would probably regret it.
All right.
Thank you very much for allowing us to be here this morning to visit with you. As many of you know, Falcon Field Airport is a financially self-sustaining enterprise fund of the city of Mesa. Our operating revenues are generated primarily from our airport ground leases, our airport hangar and tie-down rental fees that we charge, the fuel flowage fees that we collect off of the fuel that is sold at the airport, as well as 2 rental car concessions that are located on the airport. Our net income, which, by the way, we are operating in the black, our net income is used to help fund airport capital improvements, and we're going to visit about some of those today.
Before you go on,
Yes.
on that matter, because I know that there's been some discussions in some committees about maybe a misperception about the airport not being self-sufficient. Not only is Falcon Field sufficient to pay for all of its operating and capital needs, but it also has for the last 5-6 years been paying for both the police and fire coverage out there. So that's a pretty significant, and also fully funding its capital program. And despite some comments about federal dollars, you will notice, Council, both this agenda you just reviewed and the next agenda review for your next council meeting, Falcon Field is pretty good, at applying for and receiving federal dollars for the airport. So there's just been some comments made recently about that concern, but I would say this is a pretty robust and healthy enterprise right now.
Thank you.
In keeping with City Manager Brady's comments here, over the past 5 years, over $19.9 million has been invested in capital improvements at Falcon Field. Some of that money has come from federal and state grant funds, but a good chunk of that has come from airport enterprise funds, as well as $8.7 million of this amount has actually been money that has been invested by the tenants at the airport themselves to construct improvements for their expansion and their operations at the airport. To us, that's a real demonstration that they have a long-term commitment to Falcon Field. Over the next 5 years, you'll see here we have over $22 million planned for capital improvements at the airport, and you'll see those showing up on your slide as being in yellow, superimposed over the red that you saw in the previous slide. What we do is the staff and I budget far in advance in terms of forecasting. We actually forecast out for 8 years, and we are required by the FAA to forecast out at least 5 years. And this includes our planning for our capital improvement projects. So we have a lot of things planned for the next several years. We do feel comfortable that the revenues that are being generated are going to be able to accommodate the needs here over the next several years.
A question,
Yes.
Councilmember Benelli.
Karine, is the oval-shaped yellow the historic hangar?
The oval-shaped area is actually Falcon Field Park.
Okay.
And we are planning to, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we're
Okay.
planning some really cool upgrades to that. It is a historic park, very historic park. So as you can see, because it's so historic, we have identified that part of the airport as the historic zone.
See?
We just did that after you made those comments. We changed the slide very quickly. No, in 2011, the City Council approved a planned area development for Falcon Field Airport. And in this PAD, we identified 3 distinct areas within the airport in addition to the runways and taxiway area. And so you see those 3 areas right there on that slide. And right now, our first focus is on improvements to the historic zone, in addition to the airfield improvements. That's something that many of you have seen out there at Falcon Field for many, many years. But if you've driven by lately, you have probably seen several human beings up on top of the scaffolding there, several hundred feet in the air around the water tower. They are prepping the airport water tower, to give it a new look. And this project has been in the planning stages for several years, and it included going out and holding public meetings with not only the airport tenants, but also with members of the community, just to get their thoughts, their ideas on what they would like to see the water tower look like. So we collected their input, and this is what the view will look like as you are facing the airfield. So as you're landing at the airport, you will see the Falcon Field logo on that side of the water tower. And then as you are facing McKellips and Greenfield, you will see this view of the water tower. We're really excited about making these improvements to this wonderful icon at the airport, and our anticipated completion date for this project is the end of this September.
Question,
So-
Councilmember Summers.
Not so much a question as a statement. So just to get this clear, you're taking a fairly historic piece of architecture, a water tower in this case, and utilizing it as a visual icon in a community and putting kind of advertisements on the side in a way. Branding on the side. That's a great idea.
Branding.
Branding on the side.
Yes.
What a unique idea. I wish somebody else had thought of this in another part of town. All right, that's it.
Timing is everything.
Feel free to continue.
Another area that...
This is not your fault, just move on.
I understand exactly where you're headed with that. Another area that we are focusing on in the historic zone is our terminal building. And it's served us well over the past 40 years or so, but there really haven't been too many upgrades to it since like the 1980s. And we think it's time for it to have a little bit of a facelift, because our terminal building is oftentimes the first impression that visitors get of Falcon Field and Mesa, Arizona, as they're coming into the area. So this is what we've come up with for the Landside. Now, we want to ensure that we are very cost effective with this. And so we decided to keep the same structure and not tear it down and build a new building. We are also focusing primarily on the areas that will be accessed by the general public, because that's the area that we feel is the most important. The configuration of the airport administration offices where we work will change, but we will be using, for example, we'll be utilizing the same office furniture and facilities that we have been using up to this point, because they work just fine for us. So the focus is on the public areas. We also, as you can see, the design is focusing on xeriscape landscaping so that we can conserve from that perspective as well. This is the view that people get when they land at Falcon Field right now. And this is what they will be seeing hopefully about a year from now. Now, we've been sharing this information with the tenants at the airport for quite some time, and they've actually offered several suggestions during this process to help us come together with a really good design. And we've actually utilized and put into place in the design several of the tenants' suggestions. So we're excited about that. What we're really trying to convey here is a positive statement of arrival when people see the terminal building, to let them know you have now arrived in Mesa, Arizona at Falcon Field. And we want to set us apart from all the other airports in the valley.
Good. And remind us how many arrivals and departures, what's the numbers for Falcon Field as far as aviation?
Last year we had 263,000 aircraft operations at Falcon Field. And when you compare that to the other general aviation airports in the United States, which are airports that don't have the scheduled commercial airline service, we are the fourth most active general aviation airport in the United States.
Wonderful. I knew those stats were out there. Thank you.
You bet. Now, our estimated construction on this to begin is early in 2015. We are currently in the final stages of the design process. So we're real excited about this. That's a view of it from the air at night. Now, once we get completed with the terminal building, our next focus is going to be on making some additional upgrades to what we call the Landside, which means outside of the perimeter fence in the historic zone. And these improvements will include such things as replacing the underground utilities, because they're pretty old, and making improvements to the streets, the street lighting, the landscaping, the signage. We're looking to put a new monument sign out in front there at McKellips. And then also, probably one of the funnest things is going to be Falcon Field Park, and we're working with Parks and Recreation on that. And what we're looking at is doing some upgrades to it to give it more of an aviation theme, And so that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, many of you are very familiar with our wonderful friends at the Commemorative Air Force Museum, and they've just done a wonderful job in promoting Falcon Field with their display of vintage Warbird aircraft. They were recently designated by the National Commemorative Air Force Organization as an air base, which makes them, at this juncture, the second largest commemorative Air Force facility in the United States. So we're really proud of them. And a new addition to our airport that also has a historic focus is Falcon Warbirds. Now, Falcon Warbirds is actually made up of several longtime tenants who have had these beautiful vintage aircraft stored in their city-owned hangars over many years, and they decided to get together and form a group. And they are currently located in one of the historic World War II hangars. They were recently designated as the Falcon Warbirds chapter of the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is a national organization. And what they do is they conduct formation flying workshops, and they also do flyovers for veteran memorial services, as well as performing formation flying at various events around the United States. So we're really excited to have them at Falcon Field. Now, as much as we all love watching those old vintage Warbirds and enjoying Falcon Field from a recreational perspective, it's important that we never, ever overlook the fact that Falcon Field is a very active and thriving business community. Right now, there are 82 businesses located on the airport property itself that employ over 1,000 individuals. We believe we are truly a strong economic engine for Mesa. Now, our corporate business traffic has recently been a topic of discussion, and I will share with you that the corporate and business traffic is very strong at Falcon Field. And to give you an example of that, over the past 5 years, and we keep records of this, 46% of the total gallons of fuel that have been pumped into aircraft at Falcon Field has been jet fuel. And that jet fuel is the vast majority of that is pumped into business and corporate aircraft. That's actually an increase in percentage over what it was in the early 2000s.
Question, Councilmember
Yes.
Benelli.
Yes.
This is probably on the next slide. Do we anticipate any kind of increased activity with the Super Bowl coming?
Yes, we do.
And
Yes.
Are we taking that into account with the construction?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Unfortunately, the newly renovated terminal building will not be completed yet, but we will probably hold off on construction until after the Super Bowl.
That's rather uncharacteristic of us. Start now.
We would love to start it right now, but they might have to do a few design changes along the way, which might get a little expensive. Falcon Field has survived the economic recession quite well. What's that?
Oh, no, we're just...
Oh, okay. Keep going? Okay. All right. We've survived the economic recession very well, and an example of this is just in the last year, a new hangar complex was completed with 20 aircraft and hangars that also have offices attached to them. Those hangars are filling up very quickly. We have over 700 aircraft based at Falcon Field. And during the winter months, of course, it's even more than that. So we're doing quite well. As far as the 403 city-owned hangars that we rent out, we currently have an 18-month waiting list to get into those hangars, which is quite a bit higher than other airports in the valley, which are ranging, their wait time is about 2 to 3 months. So we still have a substantial waiting list of people wanting to get into our hangars. The other thing that's really neat is that the existing tenants who have been here for quite a while are now in an expansion and a growth mode, and what we're seeing is a number of them are renegotiating new long-term ground leases with us when their old ground lease expires, and they are making what we think to be very nice improvements to their facilities so that they will improve the appearance of the airport overall and be with us for another 40 or so years.
Yeah, question, Councilmember Summers.
On a serious note, while the aesthetic, I'm very pleased to see that people are investing in the aesthetic, as we've talked about that on a citywide level for some time. Where are we in these tens of millions of dollars being invested on making improvements to building and fire code? We had a significant fire back in 2012. 10 units were affected. So are we upgrading these facilities to current codes, including fire sprinklers?
Yes.
Okay. What percentage have been added since? Are we 100% protected in our hangars and public buildings, or when do we hope to be there?
As far as the hangars, the city-owned hangars, we have almost completed a complete fire inspection of all of the city-owned hangars to ensure that they comply with the fire and the building code.
Okay.
And that will be a continuous process.
Okay, and have we retrofit fire sprinklers in those facilities?
No, the code under which those hangars were constructed does not require that they be sprinklered. Now, if we were to build some new hangars, now they would be required to meet the code, the new code, which requires sprinklers.
So the new hangars, which was a previous slide,
Right.
as you construct those will have fire sprinklers.
Yes.
The existing ones, when they were built under the code, did not require them, so we're not required to retrofit, but we own them. They're city facilities. So, but we could retrofit them if we so chose.
If we chose to do that, yes, we could.
I think, Mayor, at some point we need to have a serious discussion, particularly given the loss, if we're going to be investing in improving the aesthetic, which I fully support and I think we need to do. We need to also talk about protecting that investment, and we should talk about putting some money forward to retrofit these facilities for public safety.
Okay.
you.
Appreciate that information. City Manager heard that. Councilmember Luna.
So, Corrine, are you anticipating building more hangars as we move forward? I know you talked about an 8-year process.
Right.
So is that part of your plan, build some more hangars? And
From the city's
From the perspective?
perspective, that is not in our long-term plan. We have run the numbers to determine whether it would be cost-effective for us to do that. And in order for us to be able to afford to do that, it would be necessary for us to charge a substantially higher rental rate for the hangars. And at this juncture, given the fact that we do have an 18-month wait list, which is nice to have, but we do really need to be cognizant that we don't overprice ourselves with our hangars.
Yes, sir, Mr. Brady.
And so I think the answer is the city is not looking to build out new
Right.
hangars, but certainly we encourage private sector
Right.
developers to possibly take on that enterprise
Right.
on their own.
And I know there have been some discussions, folks that are looking out there, looking at some sort of facilities, and so we're actually kind of excited about
Yeah.
the future.
Yes, yes.
Private sector.
Yeah.
Yep. It's picking up again.
Yes.
Now, serving our aviation customers is not the only thing we do at Falcon Field. We want our citizens of Mesa to be able to enjoy the airport and to look at it and get the feel of what it's like to be at an airport. So we have a number of special events that we are involved in every year. I think our premier one is our annual open house, at which on the average, we have about 15,000 people attend our annual open house, which is a great place and opportunity for people to see what's really going on at the airport. We also hold regular check-in meetings with our airport tenants as well as members of the community, just to provide them with updates on what is going on and to also solicit their input on their ideas, their suggestions, what can we do to improve the airport, because it's their airport. And I include members of the community who aren't necessarily tenants there. It's the community airport, and so it's important that we listen to their ideas. We are conducting a lot of airport tours these days. It's really caught on, and it ranges anywhere from preschoolers to senior citizens. And so it's a great opportunity to get people out there to really get up close and personal, sit in the cockpit of an airplane, touch it, feel it, take photographs. That's what starts the spark for people loving aviation. No pun intended, Councilmember Summers.
No sparking. You know, it's interesting. Councilmember Luna and I, the last couple of years, have had the opportunity to be out there for your open house event. It is a wow event. Thousands of people finding parking. It's just amazing what happens out there. And so unless you've experienced that, it's kind of hard to just describe in some numbers. But there's a love for that airport and the aviation and great time of year. And you just have to sit and go, man, this is amazing. People from all over the valley, different states, everywhere come in for that. It's an exciting event. But,
yes, it is. Partnering with other community agencies is also really important to us as well. And we work regularly with other city departments on various things having to do with the airport. But we also partner with other agencies such as the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, the East Valley Partnership, the Visit Mesa folks, because we really feel that if we can all work together, it's going to benefit not only the airport but Mesa as a whole. You know, pilots and aviators are a very close-knit group, and they like to hang out, and they like to share all of their flying stories with each other. So one of the funnest things that we do is we provide a couple of venues for them to be able to do that by sponsoring some events every year. And those events include our tenant barbecue that we hold every fall. Our next one is coming up October 4th, and you're all invited to attend that. We also have a holiday open house in December, and when it gets really hot in the middle of July, we have an ice cream social. That's in addition to our regular tenant meetings. Again, we feel it's very important for us to be communicating with our tenants, not only, talking about airport matters, but just have an opportunity sometimes to just sit down and have a dish of ice cream with them. We also participate in the Falcon Warbirds pancake breakfasts that they hold from October to May, so keep that in mind. You're always welcome to attend those, and they make great pancakes.
Mr. Luna.
Corinne, and that's once a month, right? Don't they have
I'm sorry?
the pancake breakfast once a month on Saturdays?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe it's the third month, or the third Saturday of every month. And they'll start up again in October.
So I would encourage all community members to go and visit some great stories, some beautiful airplanes. It's just a magnificent place, as well as a historic hangar.
Right. Yep. They hold the pancake breakfast. Everyone eats inside the old historic World War II hangars with all of their vintage Warbirds there inside. So it's pretty cool. So as much as we all love flying, it's really important that we always remain cognizant of the fact that we need to respect the neighbors who have chosen to live near the airport. Our Fly Friendly program has been in place since the mid-2000s, and we've continued to expand it and improve upon it since that time, and we'll continue to do that. The voluntary fly-friendly strategies that were implemented in 2009 have done a lot, we believe, to keep the airport more compatible with the surrounding residential developments. And actually, since then, additional strategies have been put into place, and some of those strategies actually came as suggestions from the tenants themselves, some of the big tenants at the airport who are wanting to be a good neighbor.
Councilmember Luna.
Yes.
Corinne, can you speak to what kind of response have you had as a result of the check-in meetings, the fly-friendly meetings? Can you speak to that?
Actually, it's been really good, especially the last 2 or 3 meetings. It's been pretty much a civil interchange between folks. You obviously have some people that are very, very passionate about the airport. You have other people that are simply residents that live near the airport that want to be able to live, compatibly. And then you have people in between. But I thought one of the most interesting comments that was made at the meeting that was held on Tuesday evening, one of the individuals who for several years has been very concerned about the noise and the traffic at the airport, came up to me afterwards and said, I really think that we're going to be able to find a balance here. And to me, that was extremely encouraging to hear that individual say that.
It's a great indicator of your leadership there, all the staff, Councilmember Luna anxiously engaged in there.
Yes.
A lot of positive things are happening, and I appreciate that. Councilmember Summers.
Yeah, thank you for that update. That was one of the questions I was going to ask, is where we are in that process. Mm-hmm. And yesterday's newspaper, I think it was yesterday's newspaper, had a nice article about Chandler. Mm-hmm. Did you see it?
Yes.
It's actually pretty good. And it discussed how Chandler is really at a point now where they're starting to market and see commercial development and business development around their airport. Very small. Two things I got out of that article. One, the reason it's growing is because they have freeway access, much like we now have the 202 that touches both Falcon Field and Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. Right. And we know that our growth is related to that as well. But the second thing is that they have started to really dig in and protect their airport from further residential encroachment. And Falcon Field is a great example of what happens when early on in planning and zoning, you do not take into account the fact that airports have noise around them. Economic activity, jobs, those things create noise. But they're important economic drivers for the community. We need to be extraordinarily careful in this council of not letting more residential encroach on either one of our airports, because one, that's just going to take away space that we can have for jobs, and two, it's going to make your job and Councilmember Luna's job that much more difficult out in the future as this airport grows. And this airport is going to grow and be an important economic piece to Mesa. So I think it behooves us to not only look at the fly friendly and encourage you to continue to do that, but make sure we do our job in protecting job growth and protecting this airport from further encroachment.
And in the coming weeks, we are going to hear a report of the Falcon Field Visioning Committee. We're really excited about that. Some very bright, intelligent individuals that are involved in all the industries and everything around there are going to be making a report to us here and help us to kind of put together all the pieces and how we should progress in the future. I've been really excited to see how that is coming forth, and some wonderful suggestions looking at everything from zoning to infrastructure and how do we grow our existing businesses. And when you have Boeing and MD Helicopter and all of those, remind me of how much of an impact in economic value to that entire area around Falcon Field. Tell me those numbers again.
Well, when you include Boeing, the annual economic impact is about $2.3 billion a year.
And how many jobs in the associated areas around the airport also?
Well, I know that, I think, is it like 10,000?
16,000 is the number I saw.
16,000.
When we take in that area that they're studying.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So $2.5 billion, 16,000 jobs, and the potential's there for some really exciting things. So I appreciate Councilmember Summers' review out east. Councilmember Luna's been wonderful and actively leading the efforts out there. So in the very near future, I think we're going to see some exciting information coming out of there.
I think this airport's going to take off.
I think so, too.
Good. All right.
So speaking of taking off, wow.
Yeah.
I'd just like to close. This slide looks kind of unusual in this presentation, but what it is, it's a very brief video of Falcon Warbirds. and a demonstration that they did up in Heber here recently. And I will just play that for you now, and I will let you know in advance that when they are flying at Falcon Field, they are always flying friendly.
Impressive, that is.
Thank you so much for letting us share what we have with you about Falcon Field. We really appreciate it, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions you would have.
Councilmember Luna.
I just want to acknowledge how grateful I am for all the hard work you and your staff do at Falcon Field. I really appreciate all the hard work and trying to balance the needs of the neighbors as well as the pilots as well as the tenants. You've done an amazing job, so thank you so much, and I just wanted to recognize you for that.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Okay. That was great news. Our next item is to hear a presentation, discuss, and provide direction on the zoning ordinance relating to portable storage containers. So we invite up Mr. Gordon Sheffield, who has been with us for a long, long time and great experience and knowledge. We're looking for good info here.
Before everybody
No
turns
pressure.
off their television, because this is
Right.
going to be boring, you have to check out these photos. This is, I thoroughly enjoyed going over this presentation yesterday, Gordon.
Well, sometimes we have fun.
The unique uses for what is an everyday, I mean, ugly looking box is just absolutely fascinating. It's really cool.
Well, it's kind of hard to follow airplanes, but kind of back down to earth it a little bit. This is a rather this is one of those practical matters that unfortunately got overlooked when we did the zoning code update. So we're coming back. We took a look at it. Council asked us to drill down, so to speak, into the issue, and so we've done that. We've been the city manager's office and the neighborhood services office. I have to give a lot of credit to them for the help that they did. They really did in helping us to set up community meetings with the folks who are interested in this topic. It's been very enlightening to find out what the community thinks about these things. Talking about these a little bit, we're talking about containerized shipping containers, containerized shipping, and I mean this is just standardized cargo. And there's a surplus of these things. As it turns out, the economics of these things are such that they're constructed overseas, they ship the cargo over, but it's less expensive for them to build new ones than it is to ship the empty ones back. So rather than do that, we have this surplus of these things running around. And so there's a market now for alternative uses for these types of activities.
Question for you, Gordon.
Yes.
Gordon, where do you buy one of these containers?
You find them on the internet. I mean, it's like anything else.
I need a new condo.
So people use these like building blocks. And as you can see here, they're just like empty bricks. Basically, they use them as the base structure for a lot of different things. This is an example of someone who's used one for their home, several for their home. Others examples that we have where people have used them for different architectural devices like an office building or a drive-through coffee shop. And I'm not sure what's going on with this one, but it's made out of portable storage containers and it made me laugh, so I thought it was worth putting in. And then we have examples, for example, the slide that's at the bottom of this, but the photo that's at the bottom of the slide is actually an example of a multifamily project that's going in the Washington, D.C. area, where they're actually using these standardized size containers, 8 feet wide, 40 feet long, and they're constructing apartments with these. So they're used for different things. Ours is a little bit more mundane. We're not talking about necessarily using these for residential or offices. We're talking about the going back to the basic secure storage, and especially on a temporary placement type of thing. The first use we're talking about is the folks who hire like pods or other types of companies to come in. They put in their household goods for that in preparation for a move from one place to another. Right now, we're doing that through an interpretation. We'd like to authorize that expressly under the code for periods of 7 days. These would be the standardized sizes, the 8x40s and the 8x20s. In single residence districts, we had a discussion about this with the Planning and Zoning Board, and we had a conversation with several folks from the community who were interested in these things. What we came up with is that we would treat these the same way that we would treat detached accessory buildings now under the zoning code. Really not a change in policy. We're already having somewhat bulky items that are of similar size that are in the code. The existing detached accessory building rules seem to work. They're a little complicated, but the basic idea is that we get them away from the property lines, but we still allow some encroachments into the rear. We put some height restrictions on there so we don't get something that's overbuilt for that particular side of the site. And we're basically just treating these the same way we would treat detached accessory buildings. So we're expressly authorizing this device for that purpose.
Now, when you say detached, the term you're using,
yes.
More like a tough shed?
It'd be tough sheds, backyard barns, pool houses, backyard studios, detached garages. It's an umbrella term that we use that covers all of those things.
Okay, great.
Just to be clear.
Please.
Sorry, Mayor. Just to be clear, if you're going to use this, say, as a pool house, we're not creating a different set of setbacks, a different set of rules for these containers than we have created if you were to build it stick build.
Correct. We're proposing to use the same rules we use for stick build as we used for these.
So essentially, if you want to use one of these, it's just a matter of aesthetic after that. And whether you'd stick build or plop this down, it's the same setbacks. Same
correct. In discussions with the Planning and Zoning Board, their recommendation is that these storage containers would have a limited applicability in single residence districts. Their recommendation was to limit them to the agricultural district and then the RS-90 and the RS-43 districts, which are the large lot, single family lots. RS-90 is a 2-acre lot, RS-43 is a full acre lot. There would still be a permanent inspection required. Because of the industrial character of this, there would be some aesthetic treatments required for these types of things, typically exterior veneers or some kind of painting. Hopefully that the design character would be compatible. Wouldn't necessarily have to match, but it would be compatible with the associated single residence building. And then there's also a landscape screening option. So for folks who didn't necessarily want to put a lot into it, if they had already had the existing, like an oleander hedge or some other type of landscaping that would screen this device from the surrounding properties, they could use that. In talking with our folks from the building code who administer that, the development services folks, they strongly suggest these be placed on an elevated pad of 4 inches or higher, so that the water would drain away from the facility. We are talking about metal rusts. We want to make sure that the metal doesn't get trapped under there. That the construction standards of this are compatible with what is known for shipping containers, which is the International Standards Organization requirements, and there's a specified standard for that we put into the ordinance. The other thing that we would do is allow for cutouts. So as long as you don't affect the primary structure, primary support structure for these types of things, cutting into the curtain walls to put doors and windows shouldn't be an issue. They're engineered as such that there shouldn't be a problem with that. So this is just an example of some of the aesthetic treatments that can happen to these types of things. Again, painting, cutouts, some of the artistic treatments, adding certain veneers like wood or those types of things. So there's different varieties and different opportunities to use these things for something other than their initial design purpose. The ordinance also addresses how these are used in commercial districts. In terms of permanent outdoor storage, that's the initial interpretation. We would continue to authorize that. We would just follow the same rules we use for outdoor storage and industrial districts for that. In the downtown business 2 district, we would authorize these through a special use permit because we have a lot of residential districts that might be right up against some of the DB2 districts that are there, and so we want to make sure the compatibility is maintained. And then we're also authorizing these through a special use permit for periodic types of situations for like layaway and stuff like that during Christmas seasons. So that's the ordinances we've presented. Any questions or any comments?
Yes, questions, comments? Mr. Summers.
Just in closing, I think the one slide here that talks about aesthetic treatment, I think is extraordinarily important. The pictures you have on the front end of this and how business has been so creative in utilizing these, recycling these into livable spaces. I mean, the one apartment complex I could see downtown Mesa. It's rather extraordinary. Exactly that one. The house it is simply amazing. But the reason it's so impressive is that, one, what it is in the material, but the aesthetic. The aesthetic is what's important. Just picking up one of these and plopping it down and cutting in a couple of windows really doesn't cut it. Planting oleanders around it because somebody wants to be lazy, to me, doesn't cut it. If you're going to utilize this material for a living space, not for temporary storage, but as a living space, and you want to make it permanent, paying attention to the aesthetic when you put it in is going to be extraordinarily important for acceptance, not only in the neighborhood, but in the community in general. So I think we need to pay attention to that and say, we expect, as we do in all of our structures, as building, stick build or whatever, we expect a high aesthetic standards. It needs to be good enough for Mesa. So.
Councilmember Richards.
I got a question about that. It seems like here we're talking about storage buildings. If somebody wants to use it for a residential structure, doesn't that just fall under the building code?
Yes.
And then say we're under an acre lot and somebody wants to build an office in the back or, and use one of these. Are we forbidding that in this zone?
No,
or are we
not
regulating that under the building code?
It would be regulated under the building code.
Okay, thank you.
What would happen is the person would bring in the qualifying engineering specs. There would be the building official would basically accept those specs, and then they would put it on a permanent foundation and treat it as if it was just another building material.
And I'd heard one point, maybe you could clarify. So Councilmember Summers was talking about living spaces, but we've been addressing as auxiliary buildings, storage buildings, those kind of things.
That's what this ordinance is designed to do, Mayor.
You talked about pool houses. That's it. Is that an auxiliary building or is that a living space?
Well, as it would be treated under this ordinance, it would be an auxiliary building.
Okay, so if I build a structure for my son to live in because we want him out of our house, and we build a pool house, what we do? So that's an auxiliary building. That's not or is that a building code? That's my confusion.
Okay, well, going back to a prior comment, there's a lot involved with that question. For a person to live in a building detached from a primary residence, it's considered an accessory living quarters, and that's a whole different set of regulations under the ordinance. In that particular case, it has to follow the primary setbacks. They're not allowed encroachments into rear yards or into side yards. They have to follow the standard setbacks that are required for that zoning district. There's a use permit that's issued through that, and they're not allowed to be rented.
Okay, so while I support this, I think at some point we probably need to see both sides of this then, if we're going to be talking about this. And maybe we can just set up a meeting on the side to look at it. Because I like this use. Auxiliary, I also think, an accessory use, but I also think looking at this from a residential or a business use, a building permit use, should be allowed as well, and maybe you and I should have that discussion so we can make sure that the two mixed
So,
in.
Gordon, you are here today seeking direction from the council, and it's my understanding you want to proceed from this point and make some changes. So I guess we need to kind of find a consensus.
Right. We've presented this to the Planning and Zoning Board. They made a recommendation to you. We have an ordinance that we've drafted that we're prepared to suggest the council introduce. If you think that the items that we have listed here are sufficient, then we're prepared with that ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Richens, you've kind of been leading on this.
Yeah, this is one that I've been working on a long time. I got to give credit to Mr. Mark Freeman. I think you're back there still, Mark, unless you've fallen asleep. There he is. He's one of my key contacts working with the Lehigh community, which has a lot of these large lot. And he's really provided a lot of leadership in that area, helping us get some consensus together. And so I think the focus of this ordinance seems to me that's addressing the portable storage container issue, not innovative uses, not residential uses. We're trying to paint a nice box to allow this to be used. I personally live on a smaller than an acre lot, and there are some that are 8 by 10 size that would be very convenient for that size lot. I think this is the right start. Let's pilot this. Let's see if it works, and then make the adjustments as necessary. Then we can revisit, I think, the other issue on smaller lots. If Lehigh can do it and make it work, and the other acre lots in the community, then I think maybe we can look at expanding the use of it at that point. But I think this is a good incremental step.
Okay.
Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Benelli.
Gordon, can you explain to me again, I guess, about the 7-day limit? I know that when house fires happen, I know that there's people that bring those pods or those storage units to their house, and I've seen them as long as 30 days in front of the house while they're trying to repair the fire damage.
The 7-day is trying to address something without having to issue a permit. With fire damage or something like that, generally there'd be a building permit that's issued with that, and we would be able to issue an administrative use permit or do this in conjunction with the building permit at the same time.
Okay. I'll add my 2 cents. I think this is a great move forward. I've been supportive in watching Councilmember Richens' efforts with Mr. Freeman and others, and I think you've boxed it in nicely of how we would, and no pun intended. And it still leaves the opportunity, and I think there's opportunity for Councilmember Summers still as you prepare the ordinance and bring it to us to have discussions, and he'll still have an opportunity to vote if he has some concerns. How about the other council members? How do you feel on that?
Okay.
Good. So I think the consensus is please continue. Please feel free to work with Councilmember Summers on his concerns and then get that ordinance and get it to us, and we'll move forward.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Okay, next item, 2C, is appointments to boards and committees. We have a motion for approval, a second by Councilmember Luna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Item 3 is information regarding job order contracting projects. Any concerns or questions on those? No? Appreciate the information we get from engineering. We all read them and go through that. Item 4 is acknowledge receipts of minutes of various boards and committees. We have a motion by Councilmember Kavanaugh and seconded by Councilmember Luna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, at this point, we'd like to convene an executive session. We'll go in and have a discussion, and then I believe we come back to this meeting, and we'll finish up our regularly scheduled council meeting or study session. So we'll now convene to an executive session. Thanks.
Mayor?
Yes.
We need a vote to go into executive session.
Oh, please. Okay, so do we have a motion to move into executive session? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Like we have everyone. We'd like to reconvene our regularly scheduled City Council study session. And the next item on the agenda is item number 6, discuss and provide direction to the city attorney regarding the possible appeal of multiple municipal tax hearing office cases involving the taxation of certain online travel companies. Do I need to read those case numbers also, or is that you think?
No, Mayor, you don't.
Okay,
And as we discussed, our recommendation is that we move forward with the appeal.
Okay, Councilmember Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we authorize the city attorney to move forward to join the appeal on these identified municipal tax hearing cases involving the taxation of online travel companies.
Okay, we have a motion, and we have a motion by Councilmember Kavanaugh and a second by Councilmember Summers. Is there any further discussion along for this item? If not, please vote. All in favor, please say aye. Thank you. My mistake. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, it is unanimous. Then you have your direction to proceed forward. Okay, next item on our agenda is to hear reports and meetings on conferences attended. Anybody want to take the time? Looks like we've had a long morning. Okay, then we will do. Oh yes, Councilmember Ritchie.
Really quick. During the break, I serve on a committee at the EPA that is the Local Government Advisory Commission. And been on the water work group, and we've been doing public hearings around the country on the Waters of the United States rule. We had one in Atlanta, and then we had one in Tacoma yesterday with the EPA administrator and the public. And the good news is it looks like most of our stormwater systems and different things will not end up being ruled as part of the waters of the United States and be subject to further regulation. That stuff is going to remain the same. What the EPA is trying to accomplish is clarity for the permitting process to help speed things along, that when people propose projects, they'll know exactly the permits they need. And it's to clarify a few issues related to some Supreme Court cases associated with that rule. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure I reported on that, and I'll talk to our water people eventually about it. So thanks.
Excellent. We appreciate that. Water issues are complex. You also serve as our representative to AMWA, which is wonderful, and we appreciate that effort there. So thank you. Others? Anybody else? Okay. Then we look to Ms. Kent, scheduling of meetings and general information for the future.
Mayor and Council, this coming Monday, you will have a study session and a council meeting in the evening. And also wanted to remember that Councilmember Kavanaugh, as well as some of his council colleagues, are hosting a Mesa Police and Fire and Medical Department surfing competition on our Flow Rider, which will be next Friday at Rhodes Aquatic Center. And this will be a free event running from 6 to 9, and that competition will begin at 7, and the event will benefit the Sergeant Brandon Mendoza Memorial Fund. So hopefully we'll see.
And the Mesa Public Safety Foundation.
And the Mesa Public Safety Foundation. Thank you. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Councilmember, but we look forward to seeing you next Friday.
And we appreciate that effort. Great causes.
Well, I just want to give special thanks to the Mesa Police Department and Fire Department staff for they're putting together crack surfing teams. And I want to thank those who volunteered to be judges. It'll be a great event. We have got wonderful support from community organizations to help underwrite the costs of the event. It is a fundraiser, but the food's donated by Raising Canes. We're going to have snow cones, soft drinks, water, things like that. We hope that the community will be generous in donations when they come to it. The monies will be split evenly between the two foundations. You can show your team spirit. For the first time, we have a special commemorative red and blue pennants for the fire department and police department. Now, Mayor, I know you're a former firefighter, but now you're mayor. You might have to buy both.
What do I do? Both of them, yeah.
But
Exactly.
I think they'll be collector's items. So I want to thank Randy Polakar and Jared Archambault for really putting this together and basically moving it from May to now. And we've had great support from our Parks and Recreation staff in putting the event together. But I think it'll be a very fun event. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Summers.
Just to, maybe you were about to get to this, just to clarify, next Thursday we're in Arizona League of Cities and Towns meeting?
Oh, actually,
So-
I will ask a question. That did come up at our staff meeting. So we do have a study session right now on the 21st. The only thing right now is to review the agenda, because on Monday, the 25th, we have a council meeting. So the question, I guess, is up to you all. We could come in and review that agenda and just have a quick study session, or would you prefer canceling it and we'll have the first review. We'll review the agenda that Monday prior to the council meeting. So
I personally, I am moderating a panel Thursday morning, so
Yes,
I
you
would
are.
not be in attendance
Right.
if we did it. So my preference would be to schedule the study session on Monday earlier,
earlier.
so that if we do have questions, that we can address those then.
Okay.
That would be my
Good.
preference.
What
but-
what else do you think? Yeah. Good, good. Let's do
excellent.
that.
Okay, we'll go forward with that. Then we'll plan that for that Monday, the 25th, and start a little earlier.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Kent.
Yep.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.